The moment the crowd began to boo, his throat went dry. The lights above the stage burned like judgment, white and merciless, and the cameras caught every twitch of his face. Ryan Cole, 32, factory worker from Dayton, Ohio, had dreamed of this moment his whole life, singing before millions on American Star Live. But dreams don't always come dressed in kindness. The first verse left his mouth trembling, off-key, nerves slashing through every note. By the time he hit the chorus, one of the judges, a tall man with perfect hair and a colder smile, sliced through his song with a hand gesture. "Stop," he said into his mic, the word echoing like a gunshot. The audience gasped and laughed. "That's enough. We don't need to hear any more. Some people are just not meant for this stage." The other judges shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. The crowd followed the cue, clapping and whistling cruelly. Ryan stood frozen, his heart pounding against the silence that followed the mock applause. He wanted to say something, anything, but his voice was gone. The stage assistant guided him off as though escorting a man to his own execution. Backstage, he caught a glimpse of himself on a monitor, a man with messy brown hair, sweat glistening on his forehead, eyes wet but refusing to break. The host leaned into the camera, smirking. "Well, folks, not everyone could be a star." Laughter filled the studio. It wasn't just a failed audition. It was a public humiliation broadcast live to millions. Within hours, clips of his trembling performance flooded social media. Memes sprouted overnight. The guy who forgot what a note is, factory idol disaster, Ryan can't sing Cole. His phone buzzed endlessly, and by morning his inbox was full of pity messages, some from co-workers pretending to care. Others just wanted to watch him squirm. He spent that night in his truck outside the plant, unable to face his mother. She had believed in him, told everyone her boy was going to be on TV. "Don't come home yet," she'd whispered over the phone, her voice breaking. "Let people forget first." The rain fell hard on the windshield, each drop hammering the silence inside the cab. He stared at his hands, the same ones that built car parts for 12 hours a day, and wondered if they'd ever touch a microphone again. Then, a knock on the window startled him. It was Mia Torres, the plant's janitor, wrapped in a worn coat, holding a paper cup of coffee. "Heard what happened," she said softly. "They can laugh all they want, but you still got heart. Don't let them steal that from you." He took the cup, warmth seeping through his palms, and for the first time that night, he looked someone in the eyes without shame. "They cut me on live TV," he muttered. "Then let that be the beginning, not the end," she replied. Her words lingered in the air long after she left. He watched the rain blur the city lights until everything melted into one shimmering haze, and somewhere inside that blur, a spark flickered again. Something quiet, something stubborn, something that refused to die. Morning light bled through the cracked windshield of his truck, painting the dashboard gold. Ryan hadn't slept much. The humiliation still played in loops behind his eyes, the judge's dismissive wave, the laughter, the cold finality of it all. But Mia's words wouldn't leave his head either. Let that be the beginning. He replayed them every few minutes, like a stubborn melody he couldn't shake. That morning, instead of heading to the plant, he parked outside the local community center. The sign above the entrance read, "Open Mic Night, Friday." He sat there for an hour, staring at it, his heart pounding with something halfway between hope and fear. Finally, he got out, walked in, and signed his name on the clipboard. The woman behind the desk looked up, surprised. "You the guy from TV?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Well," she said with a small grin, "you got guts coming back so soon." When Friday came, the small hall was packed. Not with fancy lights or cameras, just locals, families, kids, and a handful of curious onlookers who recognized his face from the viral clip. The buzz in the room wasn't cruel this time, just curious. Ryan stood behind the curtain, hands trembling. His old guitar felt heavier than ever. The host called his name, and he stepped into the soft yellow glow of the stage lights. A single microphone waited for him. For a second, he froze, flashes of the live show slicing through his mind like broken glass. Then he took a breath, steady and full. "Evening, everyone," he said quietly. You've probably seen me before, not my proudest moment. A ripple of laughter rolled through the crowd, not mocking, sympathetic. But I figured if they're going to remember me, I might as well give them something worth remembering. He began to play. His voice cracked on the first note, but this time he didn't stop. There was something raw in his sound now, something that belonged entirely to him. The song wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished, but it was real. Every word carried the weight of a man who'd been laughed at and kept standing anyway. By the time he reached the chorus, the room was silent. Even the kids had stopped whispering. And when he sang the last line, his voice low and trembling, the crowd rose to their feet. It wasn't a roar of fame. It was something quieter, purer, respect. After the show, a local radio host named Daryl approached him in the hallway. "Man," he said, shaking Ryan's hand, "that took guts. You ever thought about recording that song?" Ryan laughed softly. "Record? With what money?" Daryl smiled. "Tell you what, come to the station Monday. We'll figure something out." As Ryan walked back to his truck, the night air felt different. Cool, electric, alive. He leaned against the door, looking up at the stars scattered over Dayton's quiet skyline. Somewhere deep inside, he realized this wasn't redemption yet. It was just the first note of something bigger. But it was a start. And for the first time since that disastrous night, the thought didn't scare him. It thrilled him. The radio station was smaller than Ryan imagined, a brick building tucked between a diner and a pawn shop, its neon sign flickering like it was tired of being noticed. Daryl greeted him with coffee and a grin, leading him through a maze of wires and posters from old country legends. "We're not Nashville," he said, chuckling, "but we got a MIC, and we got heart." Ryan smiled nervously, clutching his guitar like it might vanish if he let go. They stepped into the recording booth, where the faint hum of old equipment filled the silence. Through the glass, Daryl gave him a thumbs up. "Whenever you're ready." Ryan closed his eyes and started to play the same song from open MIC night, only this time slower, deeper, like he was singing straight to the ghost of his own shame. His voice cracked again, but it didn't matter. Every imperfection carried truth. When he finished, the booth was quiet except for the sound of his own heartbeat. Daryl's voice came through the intercom, low and certain. "That's it. Man, that's the one." They mixed the track right there, adding a bit of echo and warmth, leaving the rough edges untouched. By evening, Daryl had uploaded the recording to the station's local showcase channel. Ryan didn't expect much. He went home, made dinner, and tried to sleep. But when he woke the next morning, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The video had exploded overnight, not on national TV, but across small towns, local blogs, and radio pages. People called it the redemption song. Listeners wrote comments like, "This is what real heart sounds like," and "that man sang from his scars." Within days, the clip had millions of views. He tried not to get lost in it, but life changed fast. He was invited to perform at charity events, small-town fays, and even a morning news show that wanted to feature the man America mocked who sang his way back. When the studio camera light blinked red, Ryan stared into it with steady eyes. "They cut me off on live TV," he said calmly, "and maybe that was the best thing that ever happened to me." The host smiled, caught off guard by his humility. The clip spread again, not as a meme this time, but as a story of resilience. Soon, producers from the same talent show that humiliated him reached out, asking him to return as a guest performer for their finale. The irony was impossible to ignore. The night before the performance, Ryan sat alone backstage, guitar in hand, staring at the empty seats. He could almost hear the laughter again, the sting of that judge's voice still echoing somewhere deep. But now, it didn't burn. It fueled him. Mia's words came back. "Let that be the beginning." He smiled faintly, the memory of that cold, rainy night flashing before him. Then he looked up as a familiar stagehand walked by, the same one who'd once led him off that stage in shame. Their eyes met. "You ready this time?" she asked softly. He tightened his grip on the guitar. "Yeah," he said, voice steady. "I'm ready to finish what I started." The curtain began to rise, and the roar of the audience swelled like thunder. When the curtain lifted, Ryan stood in the same spotlight that had once burned him alive. The stage looked identical, Gleaming floor, blinding lights, judges seated behind their glossy desk. But something inside him had changed. The fear was gone. The laughter from that night had long since turned into fuel. The host introduced him with dramatic flair. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back the man who became a legend after being cut right here on this very stage, Ryan Cole." The crowd erupted in cheers. This time they weren't laughing. They were standing. He took a slow breath, fingers brushing the strings of his worn guitar, the same one that had carried him through every humiliation and every small-town show since. He didn't look at the judges right away. Instead, he focused on the crowd. The faces lit by stage light. The same energy that had once terrified him now felt like an ocean ready to carry him forward. He strummed the first chord, and the sound rolled through the hall like thunder softened by mercy. The song he sang wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about grace, about falling and standing anyway, about being cut down in front of the world, and finding a reason to rise again. His voice was steady, deep, honest. Every word sounded like a confession, and a victory rolled into one. The same man who had been humiliated here was now commanding the room with quiet power. Halfway through, the camera cut to the judges. The same man who had stopped him before sat frozen, eyes wet. When the song ended, there was no pause, no awkward silence, only the sound of a crowd rising to its feet. The applause was deafening. The once cruel judge stood and walked the stage. He leaned into the mic, voice breaking slightly. "Ryan, I was wrong." The room went quiet again. "I cut you off before hearing your story, before hearing your heart. That was my mistake." The man extended his hand, and Ryan took it. "You didn't just become a better singer," the judge said softly. "You reminded us what the stage is supposed to be about." Backstage later, Ryan sat alone for a moment, letting the noise fade. He looked at his reflection in the dressing room mirror. The same tired eyes, the same nervous grin, but now they belonged to someone who'd walked through fire and come out whole. Mia appeared at the door, holding a small TV remote. "You should see this," she said. On the monitor, news outlets across the country replayed the performance. Headlines flashed. They cut him on live TV. Now he's America's redemption song. Factory worker becomes symbol of resilience. Judge apologizes in viral moment. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "Guess they remember me after all." Later that night, as the city slept, he drove home through quiet streets, the hum of the highway mixing with the faint buzz of his phone. Interview requests, messages from strangers, offers he never dreamed of. But what stayed with him wasn't the fame. It was the peace. He pulled over by the same parking lot where he'd once slept in his truck and turned off the engine. The air was cool, the stars bright. He whispered into the silence, almost to himself, "They cut me once, yeah, but that's how light gets in." And for the first time in a long time, Ryan smiled, not for the cameras, not for redemption, but because the pain had finally turned into something beautiful, something that could never be taken from him again.